Coming up on the first Lawmakers of 2004. Georgia's latest efforts to pass a child endangerment law. The latest on efforts to revise the Hope Scholarship. And is there a state government role for faith-based organizations? These stories and more are next.
Live from Atlanta, this is Lawmakers for Monday, January 12th. Here are your hosts, Gerald Bryant and Nwandi Lawson.
Good evening, everyone. This is the first day of the 2004 session of the Georgia General Assembly, and we will be here weeknights at 7 with a complete wrap-up of each day's news from the state capitol.
Major legislation is already being proposed, and that's our top story tonight as major child endangerment initiative is announced.
Governor Perdue unveils plans to lead a bipartisan effort to protect Georgia's children. Chrissy Thrasher joins us live from the Capitol with more on this proposed legislation. Chrissy.
Well, Gerald, Georgia is the only state in the country without a child abuse felony law that includes criminally negligent behavior. But with the bipartisan effort of legislators, the governor hopes to change this as well as other child safety issues. Governor Perdue urges legislators to support his 2004 child protection package.
Simply put, this legislation seeks to protect our children from drug addicts, kidnappers, and reckless caregivers.
The bipartisan legislation would make the Levi Call, Georgia's Amber Alert system, more effective.
Will exempt broadcasters from liability for the dissemination of any of the information of Levi's Call.
The child protection package would also amend the current cruelty to children statute.
Criminal negligent behavior will become a new second-degree offense of cruelty to children. The current second-degree offense becomes a third-degree offense. This bill also amends the code to include sexual abuse of a child under the age of 16 to the definition of serious injury,
as well as create stronger punishments for methamphetamine use.
This provision makes it illegal to expose a child to the manufacturing of meth. The offense carries a penalty of 2 to 15 years in prison.
Previous legislation has been introduced in the past, but this year, lawmakers are optimistic.
This will be the year that Georgia becomes the 50th state in the nation with a child endangerment law. It is a tool that we as a state need to make our children safer.
And Lieutenant Governor Taylor has been a proponent to stricter child endangerment laws for quite some time. Also today, Governor Perdue thanked those who took part in the recent capture of alleged murderer and kidnapper Jerry Williams Jones, highlighting the importance of continuing to improve Georgia's Levi Call. Reporting live from the Capitol, Chrissy Thrasher, Lawmakers.
Thank you very much, Chrissy. And Governor Perdue will unveil more details about his legislative agenda in his second State of the State address this Wednesday, January 14th. You can see the State address live here on Georgia Public Broadcasting Wednesday night at 8 p.m. And Nwandi Lawson and I will be here for that, plus reaction to the address from legislative leaders. This further program note, and Nwandi, who has been a correspondent for this program for several years, is now co-host of Lawmakers. Susan Hoffman, my longtime co-host, will be filing legislative stories during the session, and she continues as host of Georgia Public Broadcasting's Georgia Week in Review. Welcome, Nwandi.
Well, thank you, Gerald. And as we move into other news here on Lawmakers this evening, a Hope Scholarship Study Committee unveiled its legislative package today in an afternoon press conference. This bipartisan committee met 5 times over the past few months and created a Hope Scholarship Protection Plan, which aims to preserve the lottery-funded program for years to come. David Zelski joins us live from the House chambers with more on their findings. David.
Thanks, Nwandi. Senate Higher Education Chair Bill Hamrick, a Republican, and House Higher Education Chair Louise McBee, a Democrat, worked together in creating a 5-part plan, which the bipartisan committee believes is necessary for Hope to survive.
We want to introduce a bill in both the House and the Senate that represents the work of the committee.
It starts with uniform grade and residency requirements statewide. Studies showed that a 3.0 GPA is different across the state. Students with C's and D's have been qualifying for the Hope Scholarship. They also propose eliminating Hope's coverage of books and university fees, freeing up an estimated $125 million in its first year. Part 3 is limiting the current credit hours students in technical schools can earn to 63. They want to begin a pre-K study commission, much like the current one for Hope, to find ways of saving in this program, which also receives lottery funding. And finally, creating a joint House-Senate Hope Oversight Committee to oversee lottery revenues over the next several years and ensure maximum efficiency from the money it earns. The committee will gather again on Thursday with the Carl Vinson Institute to share an in-depth breakdown of the plan.
The details of the legislation are being worked out, but the generalities are what you're aware of. And we want to work in a bipartisan manner, continue to try to put these policies into law that we've recommended, and the only way that we believe we can do that is to work together.
Lieutenant Governor Mark Taylor is expected to unveil his Hope Scholarship plan tomorrow at the annual Eggs and Issues breakfast, but his plan is not connected with the findings of the study committee. Reporting live from the House chambers, I'm David Zelski for Lawmakers.
Thanks a lot, David. Now, there was a new face on the floor of the House of Representatives today. Charles Jenkins was the choice of Northeast Georgia voters in the November runoff election to complete the term of veteran Democrat Ralph Twiggs, who died September 17th. Now, a memorial for Representative Twiggs will be held later on in the session. In another bit of first day business, House Speaker Terry Coleman asked his colleagues to join him in congratulating Representative Glenn Richardson on his new post.
For those of you who don't keep up during the off time, Representative Glenn Richardson has moved from the position as governor's floor leader to the minority leader in the House. Mr. Richardson, congratulations or condolences, whichever is appropriate.
And Representative Richardson replaces Lynn Westmoreland in his post. One other change that we need to mention to you is that House Republican Representative Scott Dix is going by House Democrat Scott Dix. The Lilburn attorney Friday sent a fax to the House Speaker announcing his intention to switch parties.
The first day in the Senate was brief. All pending legislation was sent back to committees, and Lieutenant Governor Mark Taylor welcomed back senators and called for a spirit of cooperation.
The Lord does not promise us another legislative session. This is our legislative session. This is our opportunity to do our very best. On behalf of my staff at the Lieutenant Governor's office, and certainly on behalf of the President Pro Tem, we look forward to working very, very closely together. Closely, even with our friends in the lower house. We'll do our best even to work with our friends in the House. And certainly, we will work with Governor Perdue to implement his vision to move this state forward. Thank you, and God bless each and every one of you. Good luck for a great 2004 session.
Senator Bill Stevens is the new Senate Majority Leader. Senator Dan Lee is now the governor's floor leader. Senator Michael Meyer von Bremen returns as Minority Leader. Meanwhile, Senate President Pro Tem Eric Johnson updated senators on redistricting issues, citing two pending court cases, the Voting Rights Act case, which won't be heard until the spring, and a case that's likely to make news soon.
The one-person, one-vote trial here in Atlanta concluded last Friday. Findings of fact by both sides are due this Friday. Then everybody expects a decision very quickly, maybe within a week or two. So sometime probably before January is over, there'll be a decision from that case. If the court sides with the plaintiffs, it is anticipated that there will be no stay and the court will direct the General Assembly to redraw the maps. If they side with the state, then, and in that case, the state can appeal directly to the Supreme Court. If they side with the state, then I anticipate we'll move forward, but the plaintiffs will probably then appeal to the Supreme Court.
Governor Perdue and legislative Republicans would like to see state districts, House and Senate districts rather, redrawn. Democrats oppose new district lines, citing that reapportionment, typically done every 10 years, was last done in 2002.
In their first meeting of the 2004 Senate, the 2004 session, the Senate Rules Committee voted on a resolution that would open the door for government funding of faith-based social services. Opponents say the legislation also opens the door for private school vouchers. The committee heard arguments from both sides today, and our Jesse Freeman was there. Jesse.
Yes, Inwani, Senate Resolution 560 was pre-filed by the governor's floor leadership in December. This piece of legislation appears as a resolution, not as a bill, because if successful, it would provide for an amendment to the Georgia Constitution. Administration Floor Leader Dan Lee presented the resolution to the Senate Rules Committee.
There in no way is this bill and this resolution intended to better the position of those who would press for school vouchers in Georgia. This bill simply is to protect those faith-based, family-based organizations that are providing services, some of secular services across this state.
Now, Senator Lee there addressed the chief criticism of the resolution, namely that it clears the way for state vouchers for private schools. Mercuria Chase Williams is president of the Georgia Association of Educators and is also an ordained minister. And like many opponents of the resolution, she feels it would allow for the vouchers despite Senator Lee's claims.
Vouchers do not provide enough money to pay for private school tuition, so middle income and poor families cannot afford private schools.
Now, the committee did hear from members of the YMCA and a faith-based charity group called Safe House in support of the resolution, which received an overwhelming do pass from the committee. Live from the Capitol, I'm Jesse Freeman for Lawmakers.
Jesse, there are currently some methods by which religious organizations can get state funding, mainly the 501c3s and also nonprofit status. How is this going to be different?
Well, in one, if the amendment were to pass, religious groups could get the same funding but would not be required to have a separate 501c3 identity and nonprofit status.
Okay, thanks a lot, Jesse. Now, at the Capitol last week, department heads outlined their plans to adhere to the governor's mission to provide more services with fewer resources. Commissioners told legislators how 2.5% cutbacks to the 04 amended budget would impact their services. The state labor commissioner told legislators that assistance from the federal government has been vital to Georgia during the past few years of economic decline. He encouraged the legislature to lobby for additional assistance, particularly in the area of unemployment benefits.
I would like to ask and urge you who have influence and connection with the men and women who represent us in Washington to please encourage them to vote to reinstitute the extended benefit program.
Cuts of $400,000 could mean job losses for some fire safety personnel, according to State Insurance Commissioner John Oxendine.
The balance of that, about $300,000, is probably going to be reduced personal services and fire safety.
The Department of Human Resources will have to eliminate several positions due to cuts, but the department also faces the challenge of filling vacancies in child protective and social services, where the annual turnover rate is about 14%. The Department of Community Health is one of the few state agencies that does not have to cut its budget by 2.5%.
And so the only elimination of an optional service now that we're dealing with is this adult dental program.
While the Education Department has also been exempted from the mandated cut, the state school superintendent said taxpayers would pay more to make up shortfalls.
As you know from last year, that the response to that on the part of local systems has really been a couple of things. Generally, they've had to use up their reserve funds to make up for lost state revenue. Many of them have used up their reserves and have had to increase millage for school taxes to make up for lost revenue. And in some cases, local school systems have had to do a combination of three things. They've had to use their reserves, raise millage, and look at cuts.
Corrections plans to make some of its cuts by closing diversion centers in Savannah and Cobb County. According to Commissioner James Donald, the crime rate could force the state to build 11 new prisons over the next decade. And industry, trade, and tourism appears to be one of the most impacted departments, having to use $20 million to pay for land purchased for a Daimler Chrysler plant. This will leave the department with about $26 million to complete the year. House Appropriations Chair Tom Buck says the amended 2004 budget should move through his committee with relative ease, but that the difficulties of doing more with less will become more evident in 2005. Earlier, I asked him how he anticipated meeting these challenges.
I've been involved in this process for over 30 years, and this is probably going to be the toughest session budget-wise that I've experienced in my 38 years in the House.
Well, I guess the question on the minds of those who are employed by the largest employer in the state, that being state government employees, is are the layoffs just inevitable for those departments?
I think what they're really doing is, rather than they're in the corrections department, they're doing some furloughing. But I think what they're trying to do is not fill any vacant positions and not fill in any positions, which means if somebody retires or somebody quits or whatnot, those positions will maintain an open status and you won't have to fund them as far as salaries are concerned, and that's a way to save money or to meet the shortfall. But there are other areas that we're just going to have to just cut. And of course, you know and I know that we have not seen the governor's recommendations on 05 yet. He will reveal that, I think, on Wednesday evening, at his message to the joint session. So we'll be able to talk a little more about that possibly next week.
And then finally, I just wanted to ask you about the education budget. It's expected to take some hits that are going to result in property tax increases around the state.
Well,
any way to soften that blow?
I really don't know where we're going to find the money. I mean, that's the big problem, and I don't see any money out there that's hidden that we can find to utilize in those areas. And it is going to, we feel like it's going to, at the local level, that the county school boards are going to have to impose an increase in ad valorem taxes to fund education.
And we also talked with Senate Appropriations Chairman Jack Hill, who says the 04 amended budget isn't very controversial, but that the FY05 budget with its mandated 5% cuts will be difficult.
We don't have a lot of choices, but there will be some very difficult decisions that we've all got to think very seriously about.
What about the possibility of layoffs of state personnel? I know that Chancellor Meredith with the Board of Regents has indicated that he foresaw, I think he said massive or sizable layoffs if they have to do the 5% cuts. Have you been hearing that from agency heads?
Well, you know, in the case of the Board of Regents, all they have been asked to do in the last two sets of budget years that I'm familiar with is to do more with the same amount of money. They really have about the same total net dollars as they've had, and that is true probably again this coming year. So they're asked to handle their enrollment basically with the same funding. So I don't know whether that means massive layoffs or not. I certainly hope not. But you know, we have few choices in this budget process, and you know, no one's telling an agency to lay anyone off. There are programs you can eliminate, or there are ways you can handle it, supposedly, that some agencies will not lay off. But some agencies have chosen to handle it with periodic furloughs. But Board of Regents has done okay in the last 10 years that I've been in the legislature.
Governor Perdue has indicated that, in his words, he doesn't want to spend money that the state doesn't have. Revenues have been up over the past few months, but I suppose not sufficiently to offset those proposed cuts.
Well, we're over 4% for the 5 out of the 6 months in this fiscal year. And that's a positive, except that our budget, of course, was predicated on about 6%, a little over 6%. We really have to live within our means in this next budget year. Our reserves are virtually less than $50 million at the end of this fiscal year, so we have nothing to fall back on, and therein lies the very serious problems that we have to face.
Hearings on the FY 2005 budget began next Tuesday at the Capitol. Our nightly reminder for those of you with access to the Internet, you can watch Lawmakers online. Visit our website at gpb.org for more information. Click on Watch Online, then follow the instructions for watching live or looking at past Lawmaker programs in our archives. That website address again is gpb.org. Just another way we keep you apprised of what's going on at the Georgia General Assembly.
2 busloads of Middle Georgians filed into the Capitol for opening day of the session. The group calls themselves the We the People, and they are primarily from the 18th Senate District. They came to show their support for their Senator Tolson and his predecessor, Governor Sonny Perdue.
We're so honored to have you here, and I know you haven't come for me, but you've come for your own state senator. And I told him as we were walking in, it's so good to see the local Senate representation carried out in the fine tradition which you all are accustomed in the 18th District.
The positions Tolson presented to the group are much like those of the governor's platform. He focused on redistricting, ethics reform, no new taxes, and civil justice reform, also known as tort reform, which Tolson said the Democratic House suppressed last session.
At a time when rural hospitals are closing down, leaving rural Georgians without health care and without emergency care, the House has left civil justice reform locked away in a drawer. I ask you, the people of the state of Georgia, who wants civil justice reform? We the people!
The Senate passed tort reform legislation last year, but it never cleared the House Rules Committee.
Tort reform was just one of many pieces of legislation that came before the General Assembly last year but failed to pass. Here are several others. Lieutenant Governor Taylor's child endangerment bill sailed through the Senate, but Senate Bill 1 was tabled in the House during the waning moments of the session. House Bill 237, the bill creating a statewide water use plan, never became law. Debates over water permit trading killed any compromise efforts. New efforts at passage are probable. The House and Senate couldn't agree on an ethics bill for office holders. That measure will certainly resurface. The Senate never voted on House Bill 185, which would have allowed limited driver's licenses for convicted speeders from age 18 to 21. And the Senate has not passed House Bill 217, which proposes raising the age requiring child safety seats. The age is currently 4. That bill would have raised the age to 7. Now the Georgia Senate and House have another chance to decide if any of these bills will be voted into law.
Looking ahead to new business, ensuring the financial health of the city of Atlanta ranks high on the state's agenda. Just before Christmas, Governor Sonny Perdue announced his support for low-interest loans to help the city resolve its sewer problems, and legislators are weighing in with their suggestions as well. Repairs for Atlanta's crumbling sewer system are estimated to cost over $3 billion. If approved by the General Assembly, the governor's proposal would allow state loans of $50 million per year over the next decade. Meanwhile, Senate President Pro Tem Eric Johnson is working with Atlanta Mayor Shirley Franklin to enact a 1-cent local option sales tax, with proceeds used for the sewer project. That would bring Atlanta's sales tax to 8 cents and raise between $70 million and $100 million per year. But the city's financial woes don't end there. As Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport prepares to open a 5th runway, Senator Chuck Clay is sponsoring legislation to create a state airport authority with the power to privatize some or all of Hartsfield-Jackson's operations. The governor says he agrees with the model.
We run the Georgia Ports Authority through an authority of business people who are there overseeing it. The business was up 30% this last year. It throws off money back to the state through economic development, and it's a well-run operation.
Following the lead of the federal government, Governor Perdue is proposing an amendment to the state constitution to allow faith-based organizations to receive state funding. The measure is not without opposition.
We do see problems with the faith-based organizations in that many of them are exempt from discrimination laws.
As the state seeks to protect its military bases from potential closure, the governor seeks to protect soldiers from falling victim to payday loan companies. The Georgia Community Financial Services Association agrees that the state should enact consumer protections, including enacting territorial restrictions near military bases, full disclosure of terms including APR, interest rate caps of 21%, civil, not criminal remedy for the recovery of debt except in the case of fraud, and requiring truthful advertising. A similar measure failed passage last year, but this is the first time the legislation has been directed to protect military personnel.
In a press conference last week at the Capitol, the American Society of Civil Engineers released their report card on Georgia's infrastructure. As Lawmakers David Zelsky reports, even though Georgia's overall grade of C is higher than the national average, they concluded that the state will still need more than $120 billion over the next 30 years to meet capital needs.
Georgia's poor grades came in the categories of roads, transit, and stormwater, concerns that the legislature is well aware of. But during this morning's meeting, Senator Tom Price explained how these problems can be seen as an opportunity as opposed to a burden.
The challenge now is to take this work product and to move forward with action. I was struck as Ray was talking about each of these issues that the problems that we have here really are problems of success. Georgia is a wonderful place in which to live and work and play. And there are many portions of our nation who would love to have the problems that we have. So these are problems of success. And though the scores that Georgia has are better than the nation as a whole, there is a lot of work to do. And I'm always struck that when there's a lot of work to do, it means, as you mentioned, that there are a lot of opportunities.
Last year, the General Assembly passed a bill which found ways for funding besides taxes. In Senate Bill 273, a holdover from last year, should do more of the same if it passes.
The General Assembly exhibited great leadership in trying to go in a direction instead of putting a burden on taxpayers and more tax dollars in passing a bill last year that allowed for private monies to be put into public infrastructure, meaning transportation. A public-private partnership bill was passed last year that will allow that to happen. Now there's another bill sitting there now that will do the very same thing toward all of your other capital improvements.
The state has already received $400 million in bond money to begin these projects, but that's just the tip of the iceberg when you look at a 30-year goal of $120 billion. Reporting for Lawmakers, I'm David Zelski.
The Southern Heritage Political Action Committee today announced its intention to boycott the state flag referendum in March. That is, if legislators are unwilling to allow voters the chance to resurrect the 1956 Stars and Bars banner.
If the 1956 state flag is not a choice in the March 2nd referendum or any future referendum, we would encourage all Georgians to abstain from voting for either of the two flags chosen by the politicians.
The group also unveiled what it calls the Deck of Shame, 52 legislators who voted to change the state flag or eliminate the 1956 banner from the referendum. And the group vows to campaign against politicians in the deck, which includes Sonny Perdue and all the members of the Legislative Black Caucus.
And finally tonight, a group of legislators launched a new program that aims to get Georgians in shape. Lawmakers Chrissy Thrasher has more on the Legislative Fitness Challenge.
The budget isn't the only thing lawmakers trim. This session, senators and representatives will attempt to trim their waistlines by participating in the first annual Legislative Fitness Challenge.
This is a collaborative effort called GPAN, and what it is private foundations, private corporations, and the legislative process who are all getting together to get the message out about obesity in Georgia. We have the House of Representatives and the state senators, and we're in competition.
As part of the fitness challenge, each senator and representative will receive a pedometer like this one here, which they'll wear to keep track of the amount of walking they do each week during the session.
And we're encouraging our legislators as role models to get out and have more physical activity.
The challenge is put on to raise awareness of the need for more physical activity in Georgia schools.
Children in Georgia especially are becoming more and more overweight. There's been about a 300% increase in obesity in our children, both in young children and in adolescents or teenagers.
And one group of kids attended today's event to show their support for the challenge.
This is part of one of our fundraising and increasing awareness activities that we've done for many years, and they are especially good at jump roping and jump roping techniques, and they demonstrate for us all over Georgia.
Bipartisan resolutions will be introduced this year that will encourage schools to increase physical education and fitness activities.
Coming up Wednesday, Governor Sonny Perdue delivers his second State of the State address live on Georgia Public Broadcasting. That's Wednesday night at 8 p.m. This Friday, be sure to tune in at 7 p.m. for Georgia Public Broadcasting special In the Spirit of Martin Luther King 2004. That program will replace our regular Lawmakers broadcast. Be sure to join us for that special tribute. And just another reminder for those of you with access to the internet, you can watch Lawmakers online. Just visit our website at www.gpb.org. Lawmakers is streamed live, then archived on our site every night that we're on the air. Now stay tuned for Find. That's next right here on Georgia Public Broadcasting.
And that is our broadcast for this, the first legislative day of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Gerald Bryant.
And I'm Wandy Lawson. Thanks for so much for joining us. Good night.
And we leave you tonight with the Marietta Master Chorale in performance at Georgia, the Georgia Capitol, Georgia on My Mind.
This has been a production of